There are some players rocketing into week 11, but how good should we feel about them not only this week, but for the rest of the season? Hey, before I break down those players, let me remind you, if you haven't joined Underdog Fantasy yet, now is the perfect time because they're going to give all new customers who use our promo code ENDGAME this special Joe Burrow only needs to go higher than half a yard on Thursday Night Football. You take that line, you pair it with any other line or multiple lines that you like, and you could potentially 20x your entry. And as another benefit, if you sign up using our promo code ENDGAME, Underdog is going to match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $100. Take the money they give you, put it on the Joe Burrow line, use it with any other lines you like, and potentially 20x your entry right away. All right, let's start with the running back position, and got to start with Jahmyr Gibbs. The rookie finally coming on strong. Obviously came on strong the 2 weeks before the bye. Coming out of the bye, we knew David Montgomery was back. We were worried about his usage. Well, we don't have to worry about that anymore. This basically looked like an absolute split backfield. Technically, Gibbs had more touches, but that's because David Montgomery ripped off that 75-yard run, so his drive went, basically one touch. But they were alternating drives here. One drive, it was Montgomery. One drive, it was Gibbs, and they both got some work in the 2-minute drill. But this is great news for Jahmyr Gibbs, who looked like one of the biggest busts for most of the season, because in this offense, behind this offensive line, with his explosive ability, he has a chance to be great every single week. So a guy that looked like potentially a bust early in the season could certainly be a league winner rest of the season. As could another rookie running back, Bijan Robinson. A lot of people, myself included, had high expectations for this rookie running back. Unfortunately, his coach did not have the same expectations, but whether it was pressure, coming to his senses, whatever it was, in week 10 here before the team's bye, Arthur Smith gave Bijan Robinson a workhorse role, 22 carries, 2 targets. He dominated this backfield, and he did not disappoint, going for over 100 yards and a touchdown. You got to think coming out of the bye, going into week 12 and the rest of the season, they're going to continue to ride Bijan Robinson now. We always see rookies get a bump after the bye. He has a great playoff schedule. Bijan Robinson, another running back who was, I guess, underwhelming to start the year, but looks like he could also be an absolute monster down the stretch. All right, now let's go to another running back, I guess a veteran, although he's still young, and that's Jonathan Taylor. Obviously missed the first 4 weeks of the season on the PUP list, and then when he came back, he was kind of splitting, working behind Zach Moss, but the last 2 weeks, he's begun to pull away, and in week 10, he absolutely pulled away completely, getting almost 100% of the running back opportunities. Zach Moss had 1 carry and 2 targets. That's it. Everything else went to Jonathan Taylor. Now they go into the bye, and you got to think again, coming out of the bye, this is going to continue. Jonathan Taylor is one of the best running backs in the NFL. This is a good offense. Shane Steichen has this offense rolling. Gardner Minshew's good enough. He's catching passes. He's getting goal line work. Jonathan Taylor absolutely ready to smash for people who drafted him and held him for most of the season. And then another running back who started slow but is really coming on now is Rachaad White. The last 4 weeks, he's been fantastic, and he's now the RB8 in PPR leagues. That's right. Among all running backs, only 7 running backs have scored more points than Rachaad White in PPR leagues, and this is what we love to see. This is why we drafted Rachaad White. Yes, he's a workhorse. Yes, he's getting all the volume, but we drafted him for the pass catching, and that's what we've seen these last 4 games. Getting more involved as a pass catcher, getting him out in space where he's the most dangerous. We saw it on display in week 10 when he took that dump off, 43 yards for a touchdown. This is what we wanted to see. Rachaad White looking like a potential RB1 rest of the season in PPR leagues, but at worst, a high-end RB2 that you can just plug into your lineup every single week, and you don't have to worry about matchup that much because, again, he's got the pass catching. And how about a couple running backs on the same team? Najee Harris, Jaylen Warren. This Steelers offense seems to have found an identity, and it is the identity we usually associate with the Steelers, which is run the football. They have been pounding it with both of these guys. Since the team's bye, Najee Harris is averaging 15 points per game, and even Jaylen Warren is averaging 13 points per game. It looks like this is going to continue to be a trend, and this offensive line has gotten better as the season has gone on, opening up holes. And what was lost early in the season, even though I was talking about it, was this is the best Najee Harris has ever looked, but people were ignoring it and thinking he was terrible because he wasn't getting very good usage and he was stuck in this offense. Najee Harris has looked great, breaking off big runs. Jaylen Warren has also looked great, breaking off big runs. I think you could feel confident about both these guys rest of the season. And then finally, a name I did not think I would be talking about is Devin Singletary. Stuck in this Houston rushing offense. Finally got his chance in week 9 without Dameon Pierce and did nothing. As this run game has done all year. This run game has done nothing all year. And then week 10 rolls around and he gets 30 carries, 150 yards, and a touchdown. Out of the blue. What was that? Look, this happens sometimes. Guys have random big games. I'm not banking on Devin Singletary being this good the rest of the season. Plus, Dameon Pierce isn't out for the year. He's going to be back at some point. It might even be here in week 11. And that's going to make things even more complicated for Devin Singletary. Like, you pick him up off the waiver wire, you got him on your bench, you're desperate. Sure, I'm okay with that. But I don't know if this is a trend that's going to continue going forward. Let's jump to wide receivers. And speaking of a trend, how about CeeDee Lamb over the last 3 games? 500 yards and 4 touchdowns. Are you kidding me? We have seen some incredible wide receiver performances this year, some incredible wide receiver stretches, but CeeDee Lamb's stretch recently, literally the greatest stretch in NFL history, the first wide receiver ever to go 3 straight games over 150 yards and 10 or more catches, absolutely obliterating his opponents and your fantasy opponents if you have CeeDee Lamb. And there's no reason to think it's going to stop, because this offense made a drastic shift in week 6, the week before the bye. They went from like a kind of conservative, run, balance type of team to an absolute crazy pass heavy team. It doesn't matter. They're ahead, they're behind, they're blowing teams out. It does not matter. This is one of the pass heaviest offenses in the NFL, and it's working. So they're not going to change. Dak Prescott is dealing. CeeDee Lamb is a stud. CeeDee Lamb absolutely primed to win leagues for people the rest of the season. Now, I'm not sure I can say the same for Chris Olave. He's had 2 nice games in a row. He scored a touchdown. He was doing nothing in that week 10 game before Jameis Winston came in, and that's my worry here with Chris Olave. Well, he's been great the last 2 weeks, and he's had plenty of good games. He's also had plenty of down games, and I think that's going to be the issue here with Derek Carr, because we're already hearing that the shoulder is fine. He's in the concussion protocol, but they have the bye in week 11, so you got to think, unfortunately, we're going to see Derek Carr back in week 12. He obviously makes more sense for the Saints than Jameis Winston. While Jameis Winston would be fun for fantasy, not so fun for the Saints. So Chris Olave's been trending up the last couple of weeks. I hope it continues, but I do have my reservations that with Derek Carr, he'll continue to be very volatile. And I also have my reservations about Noah Brown, who has been an absolute monster the last 2 games. I talked about CeeDee Lamb having 500 yards over the last 3 games, which is by far the most in the NFL. Well, guess who's second? It's Noah Brown with 380 yards. That's right, Noah Brown over the last 3 games has the second most receiving yards of all wide receivers. Of course, most of that has come in the last 2 games. But look, he did it once with Nico Collins and once without, so that's not really a worry here. The worry here is, he's Noah Brown. There's Nico Collins, there's Tank Dell, there's Robert Woods, there's Dalton Schultz. There's a lot of mouths to feed in this offense, and we can't bank on this offense, throwing for insane yardage week after week after week like they've been doing. I think Noah Brown is fine. If you grab him off the waiver wire, sure, he could absolutely help your team, and maybe in that sense, he could be a league winner, but I still have to consider him more of a flex option going forward. And then a wide receiver who saw his opportunity really go up because of an injury was Tyler Boyd. Came through without T. Higgins in week 10, 8 catches, 115 yards, a ton of targets, and also dropped what should have been an easy touchdown, so his day could have been even bigger. But we know what we're getting here with Tyler Boyd. Sure, when T. Higgins or Jamar Chase is out, maybe he can pop off. Sometimes he disappoints. But once T. Higgins comes back, he goes back to being the number 3 option on this team. Very volatile, not really giving you much. So ride it while you can for as long as T. Higgins is out. But just understand that when Higgins is back, Boyd's value takes a big hit. And then one of the most surprising wide receiver lines of the week was Jaden Reed of the Packers. 5 catches, 84 yards, and a touchdown from basically completely out of nowhere. Jordan Love actually kind of looked good again. He threw 2 picks, but he also threw 2 touchdowns. Looked halfway decent, but I'm not buying this. I'm sorry. I'm not buying this for Jaden Reed. Still the Packers offense. You still got Romeo Doubs there. You still got Watson, Luke Musgrave, Dontavian Wicks. There's a lot of weapons here, and it's still Jordan Love. I'm not ready to buy in on Jordan Love in this offense. So for me, Jaden Reed, great. Maybe you could play him again this week if you're desperate, but I don't think this is something you can bank on rest of the season. On to quarterback, and I did briefly talk about Dak Prescott, but we got to talk more about Dak Prescott because Dak Prescott is absolutely going scorched earth on fantasy football right now. Over the last 4 games, he's been the QB1 twice, the QB2 once, and the QB3 one time. This offense made a change in week 6. A lot of people were saying, oh, the last time they played the Giants, they barely had to throw. Yeah, they had a totally different offense the last time they played the Giants. They are one of the pass-heaviest teams in the NFL, and as we saw in that game against the Giants, it doesn't matter if they're smashing their opponent, they're still going to throw. They don't have a great running game. Tony Pollard has not been very good. They decided, you know what? screw it, let's just pass, and it's working, so they're going to continue to do it. The Cowboys have a great rest of season schedule. If you have Dak Prescott, absolutely just keep rolling with this guy. He can lead you to the promised land. And I think CJ Stroud can also lead you to the promised land. This is a guy I was a little nervous about him here in week 10, going on the road against the Bengals. I was like, he hasn't been as good on the road. This is a tough matchup, and he absolutely came through. And now he gets 3 smash home matchups in a row. If you've been riding with CJ Stroud, you should be feeling good. He can absolutely go off the next 3 games. And this is a guy, again, I think at this point, we just have to accept he's a top 12, maybe even a top 10, maybe even better rest of the season QB. So if you got him, keep rolling with him. And then one of the most surprising QBs of the year has been Sam Howell. Outside of a couple games, Sam Howell has been great. He's finished as a top 12 QB 6 times this year, and he's only finished outside the top 14 twice. And what I really love about it is this offense. They are pass heavy all the time. It doesn't matter. They're throwing it 40, 50 times a game. Whether they're getting blown out, whether they're winning, whether it's close, they just keep throwing the football. They don't have a good running game here, so you got to love that if you have Sam Howell. Not to mention, look at all the weapons on this team. McLaurin, Dotson, Samuel, the running backs out of the backfield, Logan Thomas. I mean, he's got weapons. They spread it around. They throw it a ton. Sam Howell, another guy, I feel like if you got him in a 1 QB league, you could just keep him locked in and roll with the rest of the season. But I don't know if I can say the same thing for Josh Dobbs. Look, he showed flashes in Arizona, but we also saw flashes of the very bad Josh Dobbs in Arizona. He's so far been great in Minnesota, averaging basically 25 fantasy points in his 2 games with the Vikings. And he could be getting Justin Jefferson back in week 11, which is a big boost. But he's still Josh Dobbs. So while I think he's a good streaming option, I think he's a good play in good matchups, I don't feel quite as good about him about the other guys. Although right now, in this offense, with the way he's playing, you probably got to keep rolling with him. Then let's finish with the tight end position. And look, we told people in week 10, hey, be a little careful with Trey McBride. It's Kyler Murray's first start. It's a new offense. We don't know how he's going to be involved. And, well, he was highly involved. 8 catches, 131 yards. Yeah, I think we don't have to worry about Trey McBride with Kyler Murray anymore. Zach Ertz on IR. This is a team looking to the future. Sure, they're trying to win right now, but they're looking to the future. You got to think Trey McBride is their tight end now and for the future. If you pick them up off waiver wire, just keep rolling with him. Kyler Murray should only get better as the season goes on, and that, by extension, means Trey McBride will likely also get better. And then finally, in a year where the waiver wire has been great for tight ends, Jake Ferguson has been one of the best. This guy has scored a touchdown in 3 straight games, double-digit PPR points in 3 straight games, and he's finished as a top 11 tight end in 3 straight games and a top 5 tight end in 2 straight games. And I've already talked about this Cowboys passing attack with CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott, but it's also helping Jake Ferguson. These guys I feel like you can just roll with rest of the season. They should mostly be great. They have a ton of great matchups, and they're throwing it a ton regardless of game script. So Jake Ferguson, another tight end. If you grabbed him, just keep rolling with him. Also, keep rolling with us in Week 11. We got everything you need. Waiver wire, who to start, who to sit, who could boom. Everything you need to dominate your Week 11 matchup in our Week 11 playlist right here.